These last 48 hours has been crazy because your girl, Dr. Renee, Anita Faker over here,
What?
was supposed to be on Good Morning America.
Supposed to be. I got bumped.
Because Brittney Griner also got released the same day.
Yeah.
Her story is basically a story about how she built this dope app called Medic.
I quickly checked my disappointment.
But you told a lot of people, man.
I put it all over the docs outside the box. I tell you that too. Because you going to advertise
Using
with me.
our social capital.
That's
I see
right.
how it is. That's messed
right.
up. All right, y'all. What's good? Welcome to another episode of Docs Outside the Box. Remember, this is a podcast where we are fusing money, medicine, and pop culture. I'm Dr. Nii, your host, joined by...
Doctor.
Here we go. Ain't nobody asked you to Renee to sing.
Nay. I'm done.
Good. I think that's one of the things for this show that you may have to just cut out because it's just
I think we should keep that in. I think we should keep that in. As a matter of fact, I think I should have like my own album of podcast introductions. Text us if you want to hear Renee's album of podcast introductions.
That's really not your job to ask people, what. That's my job. Your job
Well,
is
then
to
do your job and
your
ask
job is
them.
to bounce ideas off of and keep it there. But you're really excited, huh?
Well, I was.
You're really excited. Hey, y'all, listen, these last 48 hours, maybe even longer than that, maybe more like 2 weeks, but definitely more so the last 24 hours, 48 hours has been crazy because your girl, Dr. Renee, Anita Faker over here on my left-hand side
What?
was supposed to be on Good Morning America.
Supposed to be.
On Good Morning America.
Yeah, so I was supposed to be on Good Morning. Technically, I'm still going to be on Good Morning America, but I got bumped.
Okay, so by the time this airs, y'all, Renee got bumped because Brittney Griner also got released the same day.
Yes.
We're super excited that she got released.
Yeah,
and obviously
that's good.
for that's a way more important news segment, and rightfully so. So you got bumped. And,
I quickly checked my disappointment.
but you told a lot of people, man.
I did. I put it all over the docs outside the box. I tell you that too. Because you going to advertise
Using
with me.
our social capital.
That's
I
right.
see how it is. That's messed up.
But I quickly got over my disappointment. It's just important that, like, for me to kind of have reflected on, I wanted this thing to happen. It didn't happen. But I quickly was like, what are you bitching about?
Yeah,
because,
I think you were tripping on purpose. I was like,
what
I
do
don't
you mean
understand.
tripping on purpose?
Like you had a feature on Good Morning America. You just happened to get bumped by like literally the biggest news story in probably
it just wasn't
the
just
last
the biggest
3 to 6 months. And you're
it
kinda
wasn't
like
just the
sulking. I'm
biggest.
like,
It wasn't
it's not
just
like
the
it's not like they're gonna delete the episode.
Anyway, it wasn't just the biggest news story. Like, that's not really what I was thinking about. I was just thinking about Dag. Like, her family must be so relieved. She must be so relieved. Like, right now, my disappointment is like this tiny, in comparison to all of the stuff that they went through. And I was like, girl, stop tripping. This girl just got brought home, and you need to, step out of your own shoes and just
Have
be happy
perspective?
about that. Yeah, have perspective and be happy for that.
Good
So
old judgmental Renee finally figured out how to be.
Excuse me? I'm
have
only
some
judgmental
perspective.
towards you, so.
How to have some perspective. And
Anyway.
All right. Well, that's good. So listen, guys, her story is basically a story about how she built this dope app called Medic. And it's an app that she did. She created the app by herself, but it's based off of a platform that's built off of Tara Reid, who created something called Apps Without Code. So she's part of this larger story. And the story's going to be, when is it going to air?
So the story is actually scheduled to air on December 29th, and it's going to be on GMA3, which is the third hour of Good Morning America, which, by the way, I was thoroughly confused about. I was like, Good Morning America comes on from 7 to 9. Like, what are you talking about?
I think they're kind of confused also with what's been going on with TJ Holmes.
But shoot, TJ Holmes dishing it out. But
that is one way to describe it. Yeah. Oh,
but
snap.
Yeah, that's Yeah. But anyway,
That's another
so
episode
TJ
right there.
Holmes is on GMA3, which is Good Morning America's third hour.
I didn't know they had all that.
I didn't know they had that either.
But they do.
Which airs at 1 p.m. Eastern time.
Mm-hmm.
So on December 29th at 1 p.m. Eastern time, check your time zones, I should be appearing on ABC's Good Morning America.
Should we ask Alfred to put that on there? Because I don't know if that's going to change.
No, well,
Alfred, put it on
Put
there.
it on there.
We just put it. We gonna speak it into existence.
We're going to speak into existence.
It is going
now,
to
I want
happen December what again?
29th.
December 29th. Okay.
At
cool.
1 p.m. Eastern time. Now, listen, on December 29th, I'm speaking to the whole country now. Behave yourselves. Don't do nothing. Don't do nothing that's breaking news.
No.
On December 29th at 1 p.m.
You're not gonna be able to control that, but
Listen, I'm talking to y'all, the whole country. Behave yourselves. Okay, I'm done with that. But we will there's a whole story behind the GMA.
yeah, we'll do an
experience,
episode about that
but
in the future.
we'll talk
and go
about that
from
in the future.
there.
But yeah.
The other shout out that we want to do is let's shout out Dr. Deb Pike, who is your
Yes.
former partner.
Yes.
She delivered our two boys. This is
Yes.
all the way in Central PA.
Yep.
We just got news that she finally retired.
Today is her retirement day. It's the last day of work.
That's a big
I ain't
deal.
coming back here no more.
I didn't think she was
ain't
gonna
coming
retire.
back here no more.
I didn't think she was gonna retire. I think that she's just one of those people who was in it for a minute.
Yeah, she was in it.
That was
Yeah.
really good news to find out that she
So
retired.
I'm happy for her.
So she was an OB that's been practicing for about over
Like
30
at
years.
at least 30, probably like 35 plus years.
And
Yeah.
she was in a program that initially, when she was at the facility that you're at, this was a program where she was the only OB doc, and she was
Yeah.
providing support for an unopposed family medicine residency.
Yes.
So for people who don't know, it's a residency that does normal family residency stuff, but also does OB. Right?
Well, that's part of the family. That's part of a lot of family medicine residencies is that they have to do OB.
Well, you didn't let me finish.
Okay.
Why don't
then
you
finish.
let me finish and then we
Well,
go
why
from
don't
there.
you finish? Well, get to the point.
Okay,
What is
so
the point?
there isn't like an OB residency that they have to compete against or anything like that. So when they are, watching these patients and delivering, it's them and oftentimes, Dr. Pike. And at one point it was you, who was doing that. So that was pretty cool. That's a really interesting, almost like a relic residency.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
many residencies do that. But she retired finally.
Yeah,
That's great.
she finally retired, so I'm happy for her. And that news is kind of very apropos to what we're going to be talking about today, which is retirement. We've finally come back to the money traps.
Yeah, so we're still
the
on
11
the
money
11
traps that
Yep.
make that keep doctors burnt out. 11 money traps that keep doctors burnt out.
Yeah, so today we're talking about retirement, and like you said, that news is really on point right now.
Yep.
So I'm going to start off by just asking you, like, what's the oldest doctor?
Wait, it's money trap number 8 specifically.
Got you. But what's
money trap
the
number 8.
oldest doctor that you've seen working in the hospital?
I've seen somebody as old as 80s.
I don't believe you said that before. Really? They were in their 80s practicing.
Yeah, but you got to understand, like OB can be very a la carte, right? OB can be very a la carte. Like you can decide that you're going to take just a certain number of patients, and then oftentimes there's always somebody else who's in the hospital, right? So you may have other doctors who are in the hospital, and so those 80-year-olds, they may have like their few patients per month that they're like, all right, there's 5 patients. I
I see
just
what
want to
you're saying.
deliver. Right.
I see what
so
you're
they're
saying.
not like on call, 24-hour call, doing
Got you.
GYN surgery, emergency.
So this might have been like
surgery.
this might have been a friend, or might have been just a certain patient that this doctor wanted to deliver,
Yeah,
so to speak. So they were kind of
exactly.
cherry picking and so forth.
Right,
They're not
right.
on the call schedule consistently and so forth.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I've seen doctors, one in trauma who retired in his 70s and taking trauma call like the rest of the other people, right? So on call like maybe every third night, every fourth night, and that might be a night call, that might be a day call, but operating in the middle of the night, taking out spleens and doing gunshot wounds and fixing lacerations and people spitting in your face in the 70s. I'm like, is this what you really want to do?
That's what they want to do.
And then I saw an orthopedic surgeon who was in his early 70s taking orthopedic trauma call. And, you know, it's not at where I was working at the time. It wasn't as bad as working, you know, at a level 1 trauma center or at a level 1 tertiary center.
Right.
But, you know, like we get open fractures and they will come in at 2:00 in the morning. You got to handle that. You got to do something about that.
In
So
my 70s, I'm sleeping.
I'm just like, man, like, so when I think about these guys, you know, the number one thing that they say is that they love it that much. And sometimes I'm like, I'm calling BS on that.
Like, do you have enough to retire? Because let me tell you. So my niece actually, she's 24 now. She's 24. She just got her like first real adult job, and she is working at a bank. You know, just graduated from college, and she's kind of like, I don't really know what I want to do. But so she decided she's going to go work at a bank, and she told me the other day she started her 401k.
Congrats to her. That's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
That's mature decisions right there.
Right? And it just makes me think that, you know, doctors oftentimes, we often talk about doctors working like later than what we think that they should, right? Like they're not necessarily retiring in their mid-60s.
We start in our early 30s, and you know, we start like 10 years later than most other people in our age.
So that's what I was thinking about. And I was thinking about, well, when I was my niece's age, you know, I didn't really have that real job to where I could start a 401k, right? Because I was still trying to get into medical school.
So the jobs that you had didn't offer a 401k?
No.
Okay.
Because think about it, like I was working oftentimes part-time. Mm-hmm. You know, I was just kind of working part-time. I was, by the time I was my niece's age, I was in a post-bac. So starting a 401k was one, the least of my worries. But two, I didn't even have the opportunity to do it because I was still working on my education.
Okay. So what are you trying to say with her then?
So what I'm saying is like, you know, we start out behind the 8 ball, but oftentimes that time that we're spending in our education, we don't even realize we're behind the 8 ball, so that when we do start our first job, we might not even realize that, this is the time that you should be starting to save for retirement. Because in residency, right, you have an opportunity to start a 401k or a 403b. Did you?
Yeah. So my program had it. But actually, I just found out that a lot of programs don't have that.
Really?
They may have a savings plan, but some of them may not have like a 403b or a 401k. Either way, though, if your program has it, you should be using it. So
right, exactly. So that's like step 1, right? Yeah. Step 1 is start your 401k or 403b.
Actually, I disagree with that. Actually,
really,
I think that overall, I think the most important thing that if you're in med school or if you are a doctor early on and you're trying to understand how money works is just to understand that, you know, what you do can't last forever. And as a result, you have to understand that what you do in the hospital, you're going to get reimbursed for that. And as a result, you have to make that money work for you. Mm-hmm. And you can do 2 things with it. You can either save that money and put it in a bank account, or you can spend it, or you can take some risk with it, like positive risk with it, and invest it, right?
Okay.
So the question that I always tell people is like, look, if you had $10,000, is it better to keep it underneath your bed? Or is it better to...
Keep it under the bed.
Or is it better to invest it?
Put it in a mattress.
And there's a sense of risk that you're going to have to accept with that. So I would say the number one thing is you have to come to terms with risk. And risk can be a good thing if it's a calculated risk.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
If you understand that, then you know that, okay, just putting the money underneath my bed or hoarding this money, or just in general, this money is not... This money is not going to just keep coming. Yeah. Right? You have to do something with it. Yeah. I think that's the number one thing that I tell folks is just understand.
Yeah, you got to understand that. Yeah, right. That, you know, your body is doing the work. And if your body should break down, if your body is primarily the thing that is keeping you afloat financially, if that breaks down, so does your finances.
Right, because you don't want to be that doctor who's in their 70s practicing. Mm-hmm. And I can be very honest, like I am assuming that's the reason why, and they just don't want to say. But I think for the most part, a lot of those docs who are working into that late, I think a lot of them really enjoy what they do. I think part of it too is there's some addiction. Yeah. They don't know
work addiction.
They don't have anything else to do. Mm-hmm. But I think part of it too is financially they can't just say I'm out.
Right.
You know, and I think that's sad.
That is sad.
Particularly since
That is.
they are in the 1 percentile, we are in the 1 percentile of how much money we make in comparison to everybody else in the United States. It's like, make some smarter decisions so that, you can be out maybe in your mid 60s or in your early 60s or what have you. So I think that's the number one thing is come to terms with risk.
Okay, well then, number 2, start your 401k.
Yeah,
or 403b if you're a nonprofit working for a nonprofit employer.
Yeah, good point. So I think that, where if you're employed by someone, there's these type of sponsored plans, a 403b or a 401k, and basically it's the opportunity for you to take a portion of your income, put it into some risky investments, calculated risky
Right, I was going to say not too risky, right?
Right. And then really understand that this is something that's going to grow with you over, years. We're talking decades.
Yeah.
And that there's that thing called compounding interest. It's really important to understand that look, if you start investing in your 20s and then you go into your 60s, you're going to be in a much better place than if you started in your mid 30s or in your 40s, where I think a lot of us start, right? Like we don't really start working
like my niece
until our late 20s. Realistically, we really don't start thinking about this until our mid 30s when we have our first real full-fledged job. Meanwhile, all of your college buddies who did other things, industrial engineering or psychology, and they're working at different companies or what have you, they all started getting a 401k maybe at 22, 23.
Yeah.
If they were smart, they were putting stuff into it and stuff.
Right. So
and the other thing too that is really interesting too is, when you start working that early, I think invariably everybody, it comes in a point where everybody realizes that, it's like when someone has, you see the guys who get a motorcycle or they get a sports car in their mid 40s, right? Like they're having their midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Right.
Or they get a Tesla.
Right. That's another episode, y'all. But that was not a midlife crisis. And I'm not in my midlife anyway, technically. I got like 5 more years before technically I'm midlife, right? But around that 10-year range of working at the same place or working in the same type of occupation, you start to get itchy. And that's when you start to see people shift into a new job, shift maybe into a new profession, take time away and so forth. But docs, that gets delayed by 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're talking about possibly having those type of feelings when you're in your early 40s or 50s.
Yeah.
So,
that you're like, oh, maybe this is not the place for me and things like that. And, like you said, having maybe one of your first career shifts. But it happening much later than it happens for our colleagues that are not in medicine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, this, since we're talking about 401k, actually, this reminded me that you remember Sandy from Yes, I Am Cheap?
Don't bring that up. I know exactly where you're going with this. Yep.
Yeah. Don't bring one up.
This is a depressing story. That's why I know where you're going with this.
But but you remember there was, at one point, she used to work for human resources. Now she's an entrepreneur extraordinaire. But she used to be a human resources person. And she was telling this story once about this gentleman who worked for, 25 to 30 years at the same company. And he had a 401k. He had invested in the 401k.
He was diligently putting money into his 401k.
That's what I should say. He was putting money into his 401k. And he finally went to retire. I guess he must not have been checking his account. Because when he sat down with her, I think he had, I can't remember how much money it was.
Let's just say he had like $400,000.
So he had like $400,000 after working 25 to 30 years. And he was like, wait, what?
So my man basically, he put the money into his 401k, but he did not buy the funds. He did not buy.
He didn't
the stocks.
invest it.
He didn't invest it. So it was just banking in this like money market account basically in his 401k. And it was just sitting there.
Like at just like stupid low interest.
Basically it was the equivalent of being in a bank's savings account.
Right.
And because the next step in putting money into your 401k is you have to identify what you're going to invest it in. So they will take the money away.
Yep.
but it's not being invested in.
That's right.
Or excuse me, you have to take the next step and invest it. So he didn't do that, and that story hurts.
Yeah,
That story
that really hurts.
And I can't believe nobody saw that and just said, hey, listen, you've been here for like 5 years and you haven't done anything. Hey, you've been here for 10 years. Like, you ain't buying stocks.
But for me, I'm like, did he not check? But but that's what happens, right? When you don't really understand what you're doing,
Damn, that sucks.
and somebody
That
tells
sucks,
you,
yeah.
do this, because that's what happened with my niece, right? I was like, listen, did you choose your funds? And she's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, did you choose your funds? Like, yo, you need to make sure you need to go to your human resources person and make sure you choose your funds. So start your 401k, but choose your funds in order for those funds to be invested. Otherwise, you're not getting, the biggest bang for your buck. It's going to be sitting there at very low interest.
So that point right there, I think, is another point of analysis paralysis, which is, okay, now I see all these funds. I don't know anything about this stuff. All I see on TV is Apple, Facebook, Netflix,
Right.
Google. Or people are saying, and all of these different, social media will make you poor, guys. It will give you so much information that you don't even know what steps to take. So I think the third step, excuse me, guys, is how to invest in your 401k, how to invest in any of your retirement accounts. I think the majority of folks are going to be investing in some form of stocks, some form of index funds, some form of bonds. And, for Kimmy, what I would say is
That's my niece.
Or anybody,
I didn't say her name before, but
or anybody who's starting, is there's an easy way to start, because I think the first thing you have to realize is, well, how much stocks do I buy? How much bonds do I buy? And stocks is basically ownership in a company, whereas bonds is you're lending somebody money. Right. Oftentimes, the person that you're lending is like a municipality, a city, or, a large company that is trying to build something. And then as a result, when you lend them money, they pay you back in a yield, so to speak. Stocks, when you purchase Facebook, you own a portion of Facebook and stuff. So I think that can be kind of
daunting to people.
Yeah, how do I know which stocks to purchase and so forth? And anybody who's listening to us knows that we do index funds.
Yeah.
And that's basically...
Keep it simple, stupid.
It's a fund that basically has a significant amount of companies in there. It may have its Apples, you may have the Microsofts, you may have the Netflixes, but also at the same time, there's also some companies that are not as big as those companies. And there's even companies that are even smaller than that. So that if Apple goes down, we're not losing all of our money. We're not losing our shirt, so to speak, with that. So I like that. The returns on index fund investing compared to trying to find that stock that shoots off.
Right.
I think the returns are going to be lower with what we do. But also at the same time, I'm not in the game. I'm not in that really high highs and really low lows.
Yeah.
We are long-term investors, so we buy it and then we hold on to it for
buy it
the
and
life
keep
of it. So I think for anybody who's listening right now, for example, like Kimmy, I would just say you take the number 110 or even 100. But some people say take the number 110. It's not a percentage or anything like that.
Again.
You just take 110 and then you subtract her age from it. And the number that you get from it, right, that's the number or the percentage that you should be putting in stocks. So let's say, let's use an easy number because I don't know how to do math, right? So I'm going to use easy numbers. Let's say she's 30. So 110 minus 30 will give you 80, right?
So she should put 80%
of her dollars should go into some type of stock, some type of asset, some type of index fund.
Right. So 80% of whatever she is contributing to that 401k.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. And then the other 20% should go into a bond.
Okay.
Right. But use the number 110, subtract your age, and that's how you get quickly the allocation of how you should invest either stocks or bonds. And
so you're doing that every year. You're like, so as you get older, like if she's 31 next year, then she would subtract that from 110, or it's just okay.
Yes, but I think for the most part, what most people end up doing is like your 20s is considered a certain part of your life. Whether you are 20 versus 29, it's kind of like the same phase, right? And if you're 30, then same thing, 30 versus 39. But once you get to like in your 40s, you want to be less risky. So maybe in your early 40s, you are still being aggressive. As you start getting into your late 40s, you may want to start being moderate with that. And then as you get into your 50s, you want to take less and less risk and stuff. So And then the other thing that people look at when, particularly with their 401ks is that, when you look into your 401ks, there's not many resources that are in there, right? Or not many stocks that are in there, individual stocks. Like you're not going to find like an Apple in there. You're not going to find a Netflix. You're going to find funds that are in there. And you're going to see something that says like large cap, small cap. This is an international fund. This is a fund for oil, or this is a fund for real estate. And that confuses people. So really quickly, when you see large cap or small cap, that basically means how large the companies are. So large caps are like the big things. These are the companies that I keep mentioning over and over again. Samsung, Sony, Apple, Netflix. Right. And then small cap funds are full of companies that are smaller, right? These are, I don't know.
Startup companies.
Yeah. These are just companies that in general, they're doing okay, but they're just smaller.
Yeah.
Right? So
a little more risky.
I would say, yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah.
A little bit more risky. But the upside of doing small cap is like you have a chance for them to shoot to the stars.
Right.
The rate of
if they
return could
take
go high.
off, they take off.
But if they fall off, they may
Rest
fall
in
off.
peace, take off.
Yeah.
So sad. Anyway. So I get that.
That's another topic, man. And death, man, Anyway.
Yeah.
You also have International and Emerging Markets Fund. So that's a fund that has mainly companies that are located overseas. Emerging markets are funds that are mainly incorporating companies that are in areas that are growing, right?
Okay.
So let's say there's a portion of...
Like gentrification.
Not necessarily. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
there's a part of the world
for sure, from Sweden.
that is gentrifying. Then yeah, you can kind of say that. So emerging markets is like the gentrifying thing.
Exactly. Don't try to pretty it up. Don't try to pretty it up.
There's gonna be some financial advisors listening to like, what the hell are you? But for the sake of making
this ain't for you.
But for the sake of making people understand, yeah, that's a good point. And then the last category I think is like a real estate fund, right? We call it REITs, or sometimes you may have something that's in natural resources where you can buy like gold or oil and so forth. But that's pretty much how stocks are kind of categorized. And that's how I tell people, I'm like, look, it's not that complicated, but if you kind of understand and see the forest for the trees, you can get this. And
these are all, like all of what you just mentioned are like all of the funds that you can invest in a 401k or 403b.
Yeah, usually these options are the ones that are available at your job.
Right.
And then in terms of bonds, it's usually like a total bond market.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may be something more specific, but...
So if I was talking to my niece, I would be like, hey, listen, did you start your 401k? Here are all the things that you could invest in within that 401k. Because the other thing she had asked me about was, well, what about my IRA? I didn't give her any advice on the IRA because I think our conversation got cut off. But
IRA.
So an IRA
that confuses people sometimes.
Yeah, it does. But the first time I actually heard about, well, maybe it wasn't the first time I heard about an IRA. My dad actually made me
you started an IRA.
Yeah, I started an IRA when I was in residency.
Oh.
Yeah, I started an IRA when I was in residency, but
Did you tell me this?
I'll tell that story for another day. No, I ended up cashing it out.
Do we have access to this?
No, I ended up cashing it out.
Are you holding out on me?
Yeah, I'm holding out on you. You know, all women got to have their own little fund. No, I don't have my own little fund, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you. But no, I ended up cashing it out for a very good reason.
You guys hear this?
Whatever.
Financial infidelity. Get ready to it. And we got you on tape. So
does it count if my account was with Fidelity?
Look at you. You're just really good with the play on words today.
See, I'm trying. But anyway, no, I did have an IRA when I was in residency, but I ended up cashing it out when I moved to Georgia, because my sister needed something. So I ended up, cashing it out for that. But that put me right back behind the 8 ball. And I will tell you, at the point at which...
Why did I put you back behind it? Because you cashed it out.
Because I cashed it out and I had no other anything for retirement. And so it's funny because that conversation when my sister needed something. She didn't ask me for it, but I said, you know what? I got this money. I'm going to just give it to you. Like, don't worry about it. She's like, no, don't do that because that's for your retirement. I was like, I literally When I tell you I poo-pooed this thing.
You thinking the money is coming all the time and stuff.
Yo, I poo-pooed this thing. I was like, what am I doing? The money's
interest.
just sitting there. It's not doing anything.
But back then, though, you probably weren't investing it in like a fund that you probably should have.
Listen, I don't even know if I was. When I tell you I was clueless as to what this IRA was even for, my dad made me do it because, well, I'm sure my dad knew why I was doing it, but he didn't necessarily explain all of the nuances as to why I should be doing it. He did it for me because he was like, well, at least then you can decrease your tax burden. Right?
So he knew that from the get-go.
Yeah,
so
because,
he does taxes. Hold on, before we go too far, we don't want to confuse people. So an IRA is separate than a 401k, folks. So an IRA is what's called an individual retirement account. This is something that you open on your own, right? You open it with like Fidelity or TD Ameritrade or
I had mine with Bank of America.
Bank of America. Yeah. Any of these things that you open on your own, and usually there's a limit of like $6,500 that you can incorporate. That is separate than your 403b, than your 401k, and a lot of times people like their IRAs better because it's just more options to invest. Like you can do individual stocks in there if you want to.
But you can't put as much money.
You can't put as much money. Yeah. So you cashed yours out. You gave some of the money to your sister.
I gave all of it to my sister.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I gave all of it to my sister because she had a little bit of an emergency. But yeah, I didn't even. When I tell you, I poo-pooed like just the notion of having the IRA. I was like, whatever. It was no big deal. So at the time, I think it was like 5,000. Was the max? Yeah. It was way back when.
It was like 5,500 or 5,000.
Yeah, it was way back when.
Because for you, this is like 1990.
Get out of here, please. Whatever. Why are you always trying to make me seem older than I am?
Bill Clinton times and shit.
Why are you always trying to make me seem older than I am? That only looks bad for
guys,
you.
There's an ongoing. No, it makes it seem how aggressive you are in terms of you being a cougar.
Get out of here, please. Whatever.
Hello, Mr. Darko. How are you? I'm like, who the hell is this?
Hello, Michael.
What the hell is this, man?
Marcus, darling.
That was one of my favorite movies, but that could get annoying really quick. So hold on. I think we're still not done because once
let's talk about IRAs.
Well, real quick, once your niece understands that based off of her age, 80% of the money should go into stocks and 20% should go into bonds, she may be wanting to think, okay, like now, like I understand the different types of funds, but how do I get it? Like, what's the order in which I get it, or how many of each one do I get? And I would just say the majority of what you're purchasing with stocks should go in a large cap fund, right?
Okay.
You want like the bigger companies to, incorporate a bigger portion of your portfolio, but then you also want some of the small cap exposure, right? And then you also want some, international exposure.
Okay, this is still for the 401k.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
But the same type of thought process that you're using to put into your 401k, you want to use in your IRA also.
Okay, so you can do this with your IRA as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Now, some people, they're a little bit more aggressive with their IRAs. We're not going to get too much into the specifics.
Right.
This is generic information, guys. And remember, this is not professional advice. This is entertainment only, guys. So don't be coming for us in these streets. Just make sure you understand that, make sure you talk with an advisor. That's our disclosure. That's our disclaimer. Just make sure you do that.
If you come up to me and say, I did, but you going to catch these hands because I'm going to tell you, I done told you I wasn't no financial advisor.
You're gonna clap just like that?
Yep. Just like
guys,
that.
She's lying. She's not going to do that.
She's
going to say,
you will catch these hands.
Well, anyway, listen.
I will clap these hands.
I think that if they decide that, okay, look, out of the 80% that I'm going to put into stocks, like I'm going to get a certain amount as large cap, and then I'm going to get a small amount as small cap and international funds. So basically like 50% of that 80% should be buying like a large cap fund. And then 15% you can use to a small cap and another 50% in international.
All right.
So
Alfred, you getting all these numbers?
So those numbers basically make up your 80% of stocks, right?
Yeah.
So that you kind of know, and you're diversifying between large companies, small companies, and companies that are not in the United States. It just gives you a pretty good diversification. And that's another thing that a lot of people need to understand is that you don't want to put your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
You want to invest, but you want to invest wisely, and you want to make sure that if a company goes down or if a fund goes down, you're not asked out, so to speak.
Right.
You're kind of spread among a whole bunch of different type of exposures. And then obviously the 20% is going to go into bonds.
Okay.
So I would say that's the advice that I would give Kimmy.
Okay.
And then the next thing, number 4 is, look, when you're purchasing these funds, they're expensive.
Yeah.
Well, some of them could be expensive.
Yeah.
And it's really important to understand that when you're looking at these funds, you want to understand how much or what companies they're invested in. You want to understand like how many years this fund has been in existence. Like there's information where if you go into your 401k, you can find out about these funds. It's usually called a prospectus. And a lot of this stuff is electronic now or digital, right? And the thing that I always look at is how much does it cost to buy this? And there's nothing that says how much does it cost to buy this.
So it ain't free?
It's called an expense ratio, and it's not free.
So, I had, before I knew about all this, I had never realized that, like, yeah, you're investing your money, but it's actually costing you money to invest your money. Like, you actually have to buy.
I mean, it takes money to make money.
Right.
Scared money don't make money.
Yeah, scared money don't make no money. But I didn't, there was a point at which I didn't realize, like, oh, I have to actually buy this service, right? Like, I'm buying the service of being able to invest my money, So when I talk to my nieces and nephews about, like, all these investment opportunities and things like that, they're always like, wait, I have to pay somebody. It's like, yeah, you got to pay somebody. Like, you can't just put your money in and then, not pay somebody for something to have access to something.
I think that's one of the biggest things that if you've never dealt with money, I think that's one of the biggest shocks and surprise. That's what bothered me when I came out of residency, was that I felt like there was a target on my back, and there was all of these people who were advertising, quote unquote advertising, them wanting to do something for me and not realizing that their hand is out and this is going to cost money, right? Everything that they do is going to cost something. In some form or fashion. And a lot of these advisors, they don't want to let you know that it's going to cost them money. They just say, hey, I will manage the money for you, or I can help you manage your money. And you never ask, how much does it cost?
Yeah.
How much is it costing me? What kind of funds?
Right.
You're just so busy literally trying to build your craft, your practice, that you trust these people, and you don't realize that possibly either they don't have your best.
Taking you for a ride.
Yeah, they may not have your best interests in mind, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
So, with these expense ratios, some of these funds cost money to actually manage them.
Right.
Like there has to be a fund manager who's actually going through and doing all the research and finding out what companies are in there, and they're taking companies out of this fund and putting companies back in this fund and doing all of these different things.
Yeah.
That costs money. So
they're going to take their percentage.
Right. So, for example, like I have a thing here. Like if you took $100,000 over time at 7% annual return, and you looked at a fund two funds that do the same thing. One fund that has a 0.8% expense ratio versus another fund that does the same type of companies. It has the same type of companies, but it has a 0.4 expense ratio. You're talking about you're going to be losing $70,000 more with the 0.8% expense ratio.
It's a bigger percentage. Even though it's 0.8, you're like, oh, that's little, that's not a lot.
There you go.
But yeah. 0.8
it makes a big deal.
Yeah, it's definitely different than 0.4.
So if you see Kimmy looking and she's like, I'm not sure what to do.
Is it 0.8 or 0.08?
0.8.
0.8.
Yeah.
So 0.8.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So if you are letting her know, hey, look at this. Like, this is not like sneakers, right? Like, you're not trying to buy Jordans and, oh yeah, it's expensive, so I know it's gonna, it's gonna come with a certain value.
Right. You don't want to pay more.
No. Cheaper is the game, guys.
You do not want the Gucci of expense ratios, okay?
You don't, because that does not correlate.
You want the knockoff. Okay?
That doesn't correlate to better returns. It doesn't.
You want the knockoff, right? You want the Lucci.
Doesn't correlate to better returns.
Let me get that Lucci expense ratio. Thank you.
Right. Where are you going? Folks.
No, I'm laughing because there literally is this dichotomy now, right? Like, because like you said, we don't think about that when we're buying products, right? We don't think, no, I want the cheapest product, right? Nobody's going to go in and be like, yeah, I want those, Donna Farrens, you know what I mean? They want the Donna Karens, you know what I mean? So Yeah, there literally is like a shift, right? There's literally like a shift of the fact that you now have to think about how much money you actually want to save so that you can make more money. But that doesn't correlate to when we're buying products, when we're going to the store, when we're shopping on Amazon. We want like the best quality product, and we oftentimes correlate that with how much money we're spending.
Yeah,
it just doesn't work here.
That doesn't correlate. So they've done plenty of studies and found that like if you're spending more on a fund and it costs more, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to perform better.
Yeah.
That like it just doesn't. There's no correlation there whatsoever. So once again, tell me what you're gonna tell Kimmy.
What do you mean? What I'm gonna tell
What instructions you gonna tell her?
I'm gonna tell her listen to Docs Outside the Box.
There you go. But she's starting a 401k.
She's gonna start her 401k. Yes.
She's going to
pick her funds.
Well, she's gonna do 110 minus her age,
yes.
right? So she knows how much of a percentage to purchase in stocks or index funds and bonds, right?
Yep.
And then she's going to decide how she's going to choose these stocks. And then from there, the key things is to make sure that when she's purchasing funds, she's knowing how much they cost.
Right.
Particularly if they're the same funds. And
right.
I think that's really, really a good start. So, here's a quick story. Like when we started investing together, right? Like when me and you were both married, we were pretty strategic about how we were going to invest.
Right.
And the reason why is like, we had like this huge amount of debt that we had to take care of, right? We had almost $700,000 in student loan debt. We also had a condo in Georgia that, we basically didn't want anymore. And I was like an accidental landlord for. You had some tax debt. Like we just had a lot of debt. And as a result, we had to make a decision as to, okay, there's the opportunity to save and build for the future by investing. And then there's also this huge amount of debt that is really not allowing us to kind of live where we want to live,
right.
not allowing us to take the chances that we want to take with our career. So we made a calculated decision to pay off that debt and really kind of just minimize how much we're investing. But the thing that we did is we always maximize how much we put into our 401k.
Yeah.
We always maximize that. We also maximize what went into our traditional IRA. And then we had a really healthy emergency fund because we didn't want to use credit cards anymore.
Yep.
And then everything else went into paying off that student loan debt. And those were some slim, lean years.
Yep.
But the concepts of what we're talking about don't get lost there because we kind of also knew, okay, listen, if we invest in our 401k, we don't want to miss out on those 3 to 5 years of compounding interest. We want to make some decisions of investing. We want to start acting like, we know what we're doing. We don't want to wait till we pay off all of our debt before we start investing.
So we did the combo. Yeah, we did the combo. And, you do whatever works for you. But for us, it was important to do both, to invest and to pay off debt at the same time. And then, because our debt payoff was so accelerated, then all that money that used to go towards debt now could go towards investment. I think
it took us 3 years to pay it off. So I think a lot of times people, when they'll tell you, well, should you invest versus should you pay off your debt? I think people think that like you're going to be paying off your debt in perpetuity, and then as a result, you're not going to be putting money into your investment. And it's just, listen, if you're, for us, we had, the every dollar Dave Ramsey system. We don't rock with Dave Ramsey, but we just found his system easy. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it literally was a line item of debt that as soon as we got the debt paid off in 3 years, we just converted that into investment. Yeah. And that was it. So we were behind 3 years, but in terms of the just feeling emotionally free and doing the things that we wanted to do and doing locums and starting a podcast and all these different things, like you can't measure that.
Right.
It's not for everybody, but you can't measure that.
I would argue too, like, if we had kept going on with the debt, right? Like if we didn't do like a debt payoff, like I really don't know. We didn't do this, but we didn't calculate, well, how much, actually, no, that's not true. We did calculate that if we had paid off the debt, in the time that the loan companies wanted us to pay off the debt, that it would have been almost twice as much that we would have been paying off.
Yeah. So I think if we did like a 10-year or 15-year.
No, it was longer. We were like on a 25-year plan, and it ended up being like almost
long?
one. Yeah.
Damn.
It was that long. It was like $1.1 million that we would have been paying. And I'm like, for tuition.
Yeah, so basically
I
another
paid $1 million for tuition.
Basically, $600,000 was towards the principal, and then an additional $600,000 would have been spent over that time on interest.
In interest. I'm like, I don't want to do that
that's
either.
Money we could put in our kids' 529.
Exactly.
That's money we could have used to travel. That's money we could use for retirement. That's money we could use to help family. That's
we
money
saved
we could
a lot.
With a lot of different things that's just like, it's just interest that just goes into the Sally Mae or Navient or whoever
pocket
stuff is. And
so I think we saved on that. And so the whole, you missed out on 3 years. I'm like, but did we? I don't know that we missed out on 3 years.
Here's one thing. Here's a low-key hack that I think we should tell people is that, you were working part-time and then I was full-time as a trauma surgeon. So we lived on your salary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your part-time salary. That's how we lived. And we can get into that to another episode.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about extreme, just using cash for everything and $200 a month for groceries. Like, we were not playing. Like, this is the ramen diet that Tiffany Aliche talks about. Right. Two doctors doing that. Ramen noodles diet that we was doing. But I think in terms of, I lost my train of thought. Help me out here.
Yeah, you were talking about the fact that we paid off the debt. We paid cash for everything.
What was I trying to get to?
I don't know what you were trying to get to.
Man.
Well, you'll get to it.
Well,
there's a saying. Either what you were trying to say, if you can't remember what you were going to say, it either wasn't important or it was a lie.
Ooh, yeah.
You lying on the podcast?
I never lie on a podcast. I may embellish some things for the podcast.
I was gonna say,
but I never lie for the podcast. I do think that the key things are when we lived off of your salary. We were able to live on a part-time salary, and then we used my salary completely to pay off the debt. And then remember, I also did locum tenens. So I worked for 2 weeks out of the month. That was my normal job, was working for 2 weeks straight, and then I'll have 2 weeks off.
Shout out Comp Health.
And, during those last 2 weeks, I would do locums. And one of the companies that we worked with, one of the companies that I decided to do locums with was Comp Health. So I would literally work. We would stay together, and then I would go off to Idaho. And there was one time I was working in Duluth, Minnesota. I was working through Comp Health. I know that you use Comp Health to work with.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this before. I worked with Comp Health when I was out in Georgia, and I think at one point they put me in Pennsylvania as well, if I remember correctly.
And just so you know, when we say locums, we're talking about literally temp agency, temp staffing for docs, right? If you think about how a job needs a secretary and they go through a temp agency, it's the same thing. A hospital needs a surgeon or an OB, they go to a temp company. That's what Comp Health is. Yeah.
So at the time we were using Comp Health and just kind of figuring things out. And at that point, we were also thinking about, well, how do we set ourselves up as a business? That was the other thing, right? Because here's the thing, you kind of take a hit, right, when you're not set up the right way. And so what was nice was that at that point in time, we had figured out that if we set ourselves up as an LLC, even though we were working with Comp Health, that Comp Health could pay our LLC, right? And then we could use that LLC to then pay ourselves, which then allowed us the ability to be able to set up our own retirement accounts like 401k, So that was nice. We became our own employers.
That's another hack, guys. If you have your own 401k because you're working as an LLC, right, you can put in way more into your 401k, your solo 401k. You can put way more into that than if you are working for a hospital or working for a company and you're using a traditional 401k. Just low-key hack. Just wanted to let y'all know that. So.
And I think at that time, you did have Comp Health pay you as Equal Access Health.
Yes.
And that was just really, that was really helpful, I think, for us, and helped to propel us to understand even more what we were doing at that time, even through our permanent jobs, because we were working permanently while we were doing locum tenens through Comp Health as well.
I think there was a point where our solo 401ks were growing faster than our traditional 401ks because there was so much more that we could put in because we're a business. And it was just like,
Exactly.
So this is how the IRS works.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
So, if you're interested in doing locums and maybe doing something like this, setting yourself up as an LLC, you don't necessarily have to go out and find the hospitals yourself. You can actually work with a locums company like Comp Health and do the same thing that we did and set yourself up to be your own employer and start your own 401k. So if you're interested, go to comphealth.com, COMPHEALTH.com. Alfred, look it up.
Yeah, please.
And, see what they have to offer you, because we certainly used them and had a great experience.
So here's one thing, though, that we didn't mention earlier on that I think some people may be like, well, why is it that if you are your own business, you can put in more versus if you do in a traditional company? Well, part of it is the employer match, right? So,
yes.
So the employer match, even at your own job, right? Or excuse me, at a job that you work at is if let's say you put in $100, a lot of companies will also like match a certain amount that you put in. So let's say they match, for every dollar that you put in, they put in 50 cents. I'm just using gross numbers.
Right.
So that means that if you put in $100 on a monthly basis, they will kick in $50 on top of that.
Right.
So now whatever was your
yeah.
$100 contribution, now you got actually $50 that they're contributing on top of that. So now you got $150
per
right?
month.
Per month. Like that's what they say is free money, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot
free
of money.
money.
Until I found out that these companies get like a tax benefit for that, actually.
Well, of course they do, right?
That's why
that's the
why they offer
point.
to
But
match.
that's why we do 401ks
Right.
is for the tax benefit. So, the company is getting a tax benefit, but so is the individual who's putting the money into the 401k.
And basically what that 401k does is when you put money in, you are in essence using pre-tax money, and you're actually decreasing how much taxes the IRS can tax you on. So it's not even just a investing standpoint win, it's a tax burden decrease win also.
Yeah.
So let's say over a year you're making $100,000, you put $10,000 away into your 401k. That means that actually the IRS can only tax you at $90,000
right.
in comparison to $100,000
right.
if you didn't put anything away. So it's a win.
Yeah, it's kind of like tax. That's what sometimes you'll hear people say, tax sheltering. Shelter your money, basically protect it from the IRS. Don't let them touch it. You better shelter that money. Okay. Don't let them touch it. I think you're like IRS. I don't make $100,000. I make $90,000. Just ask my 401k.
That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, ask my 401k how much money I make.
Run tell that. That's what you tell your. That's what you tell your 401k. Run tell that.
Run tell that. You better go tell the government that you had taken $10,000 of my $100,000. Okay.
So I think that, it's really clear, like if you're telling Kimmy or you're telling someone new, like these are the steps that you should be taking.
Right.
And then I think the key thing is, listen, like there's no need for a sense of like analysis paralysis, right? Follow these steps. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And also don't be afraid for risk, right?
Yeah.
If you're following, certain steps, if you're doing these tried and true methods, I think for the most part, there's going to be time when you have, downfalls. But for the most part, the market is going to give you anywhere between 7 to 12% annualized rate of returns. You just continue to follow and go from there. So, you got your 401ks, you got your Roths, you got your traditionals. Don't sleep on health savings plans, y'all, particularly those docs who are young, residents who are young, or couples that are young. There's something, if you get like a high deductible health plans, these are people who don't have chronic medical conditions, definitely people who don't have kids.
Man, these kids, you be taking them to the hospital all the time, taking them to the doctor all the time.
Yeah. They have these health savings accounts where you're supposed to put money away for qualified medical expenses. But, what if you don't need to use that?
Right.
So these are actually like brokerage accounts that are connected to your healthcare plan, and you put money in, and let's say you don't use it after a year, it continues to grow.
Yeah.
And actually
Still
it becomes
invested.
almost like a traditional IRA for you. You can get it out at the age of 65 and so forth. But if you decide to use it for qualified medical expenses, you want to buy glasses, or you want to use it for IVF, or you want to use it for, an upcoming surgery that you may need, and you need you're definitely going to need co-insurance and so forth. You can use this.
Right.
And there's, a tax advantage to using that. So there's a lot of vehicles out there to really help you make your retirement go faster.
Yeah, man, don't get burnt out and be working. Let's work it to the bone, bone, bone. Remember that? Let's work into the bone, bone, bone. Yeah, don't work to the bone, until you're 70, 80 years old because you can't afford to retire. Like, it just hurts my heart to know that there are people out there who literally can't afford to retire. Like, I can't afford to stop working. Like, wait, what?
I think a lot of people look at it as this, like, I make money, and because maybe I'm in the 1%, or maybe because I'm a physician, or I'm an athlete, or I'm a musician, or what have you, like, my money is special, right? And something special is going to happen to my money. It's like, well, no, you just have more of it, but the the concepts of money are the same. Like, if you don't grow it, or if you don't make it work for you, this is going to wither away. You're going to lose value. And you look at times right now with inflation. Inflation is crazy. So, the price today is not the price, or the price yesterday ain't the price today.
The price today.
So,
exactly. Because if you ask yourself, so what do you think? Are taxes going to go up, or are they going to go down? Like, come on, people. We know.
Or just the prices in general of anything. Right.
The price yesterday is not the price today. And so another thing that people actually, kind of try to, they try to rely on, well, I'll just get Social Security. Or, maybe they have a pension. If you have a pension, that's great. But those are few and far between now, right? A lot of places don't necessarily have pensions anymore.
That's more of the rarity, I think.
Right. That's more of the rarity at this point. I don't know what your thoughts are about, Social Security and whether or not it will be around. I have no clue whether or not.
Even if it is around when you get to
a lot of money.
It's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's like $1,100 or $1,700. It's like the way in which real estate and rental properties and so forth are going up. Like, that might not even be enough to pay for your where you're going to live, or even what you're going to eat. So I don't know if that's going to be here or what have you. But if it is, it's not enough to completely live off of. So
did you know you could check, like, if you go to the Social Security Administration website right now, you can check how much you're slated to get for Social Security?
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah,
I knew that because
I think I'm like at $1,200 or something.
Yeah, because since we're a company, when we submit our, we have to, like, when we pay ourselves, like, there's a certain amount that we have to withhold and send to the government. And then, like, there's like this little thing that we get back that shows, well, this is what your employees will get based off of how they're going. So I see that number all the time. But if yours is saying $1,200, like,
yeah, I'm at $1,200. So let me tell y'all, I do not plan on planning for my retirement.
Well, you're way closer to retirement than I am.
Anyway, I am not. Anyway, so I am not planning on planning for retirement. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get Social Security, and then all of the audience members who are listening to this show will open up their homes to me, right? From the kindness of their hearts. And I will just live with them and have my little $1,200. That's my retirement plan right there.
I'll trade you in for a nice young tenderoni.
Tenderoni.
You can stay where you're going to stay. You can stay with the audience members. I got my nice little 20-something-year-old. I'm good. And I think this episode is good, y'all. All right. So listen, let's not prolong the inevitable. Guys, we want to say thank you very much for listening to this episode of Docs Outside the Box. Listen, retirement is a big deal, particularly retirement for doctors. Yeah. You don't want to be that doctor who's in their late 70s or 80s, trucking in and going in the middle of the night because you have to. Right. You want to do it because you love to do it, or like you said, you have some type of patients that you can cherry pick and so forth.
Exactly.
That's where it's at. And, guys, look, we care about y'all, and we want to be able to share our stories and let you know how we do things, and also edutain. And remember, the most important thing, get professional advice, because this ain't professional advice. This is for edutainment purposes only. Don't come see us in the streets.
Y'all don't hear how much I'm
Otherwise,
laughing?
You're going to see Dr. Renee do what?
I'm clapping these hands.
She's coming with those hands.
Okay. Listen, this definitely. This definitely ain't no advice, official advice, because people who give advice shouldn't be laughing this much.
especially two doctors.
Exactly. So if you took this advice, that's on you. Okay.
You ever see two doctors like laughing like crazy, kikiing in the OR and stuff? It's like, yo, what's going on here? Yo, only if the patient knew. Like, doctors be kikiing like crazy. Oh, who has said that? Oh, I be kikiing. Oh, yeah. Especially the music that be playing. Oh, yeah. No doubt. No doubt. No doubt. But that's going to be for another episode, y'all. We going to catch y'all on the next episode of Docs Outside the Box, yo. Make sure you text us and let us know what you think about this episode.
Yep.
And also, listen, you can always find us on, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts,
YouTube.
Spotify. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube. We are improving our presence there. So
Yeah.
listen, guys.
Especially with all those numbers that we threw out, you might want to go on YouTube and see all of that.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, guys, we'll catch you all on the next episode of Docs Outside the Box Show.
Peace.
Peace. Peace. That was real corny. Peace.